Kentucky Derby. Kentucky Derby.
Now they move around the turn. The leader, War Admiral, 2.5 for green.
Churchill is in the center of the racetrack. Seattle Sloop drawing alongside again.
War Emblem is still there. War Emblem is pulling away. He's got another gear.
Yeah, the Swiss they come in the Derby. Wheel away takes command.
Lion Hot is all hot. Smarty Jones is all out. And here is the first undefeated winner of the Kentucky Derby since Seattle's low of 1976.
The finishing touches are being applied. The draws have occurred. Just 3 days until the Kentucky Oaks, 4 until Kentucky Derby 149 as the waiting game for the connections continues. It's time for the morning workout show presented by Twin Spires. Under the Twin Spires of historic Churchill Downs in Louisville, Kentucky, main track is fast and the weather is comfortable, right around 50 degrees with clear skies. Let's take a look at the headlines. 3-1 morning line favorite Forte draws post position number 15 for Kentucky Derby 149 in a full field of 20. For post position number 7, Wet Paint has been tabbed as the 5-2 program choice for the Kentucky Oaks with 14 signed on plus the also eligibles. Disarm posted an easy half-mile breeze yesterday. Derma Soda Gake amongst the trio of horses expected to work today. Skinner, Lord Miles, 2 fills appeared on the racetrack for the first time yesterday. Race Kane arrived and we expect to see him this morning. The draw has commenced and we have the post positions. We're going to have a lot of discussion about it during the course of the show. Here's a look at the draw board from the Aristides Lounge yesterday afternoon. And there was a lot of tension in the room, a lot of anticipation. We have the post positions. We have the morning lines for both the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks. Joe Christopher and Scott Shapiro. And Scott, lots of replays, trip notes, pedigrees, watching these horses on the track all of these mornings in a row. Now we have the post positions. We can really start to visualize how it might play out.
Yeah, the draw was a lot of fun yesterday. So many of racing's biggest names in one room, always a good time. And I thought, in terms of the draw, who won, who lost, there were some minor losers, some minor winners. We'll see the post position shortly and talk about it more over the course of the hour and, of course, over the week. But no one really was hindered, in my opinion.
You never really know until that gate
Sure.
springs open. Horses get sandwiched. Horses break slow. Horses break quickly. Racing gods need to be on your
Fair
side.
enough.
Post 17 has never won the Kentucky Derby. Will that affect Caitlin Free's top selection? Is she going to take Derma Soda Gake? That remains to be seen. We do know she's on the backstretch this morning, and it's a little bit warmer and a nice day, Caitlin.
It is. I think it's going to shape up to be a pretty nice day today. Good morning to you, Joe and Scott. And wouldn't you like to know about me picking Derma Soda Gake? The jury's out still a little bit. Post position 17 does kind of have that quote-unquote curse around it, but I won't let it scare me way too much, as Scott mentioned. No real super losers or winners of the draw this year. I thought overall it was pretty fair, but Disarm had a chance to talk to Steve Asmussen about him, the horse's draw, and the work yesterday. They seem very, I don't want to say confident, but they're comfortable with the way this horse is coming into this race. Probably wouldn't trade positions with anybody. He seems to be doing really well following the work yesterday. And a couple of new faces on the track yesterday. Lord Miles, Skinner, 2 fills, all looked good on the track yesterday. Had a couple of Oaks contenders we saw for the first time. And overall, they all looked very good. Skinner going to be the first time we'll see him on the show today. He went out a little late yesterday, so this is going to be the first time we're going to see him this early. Also, Raise Kane, late arrival yesterday, going to be the first time we see him this morning. But the prep work is done for the Derby. Our real kind of handicapping and work starts now that the draw has been done. I'm going to get a chance to talk to trainer Larry Ravelli about 2 fills. Their work still going on a little bit leading up to the race, but most of that work is done for them. But going to get to that very shortly, but going to welcome in the 4th member of our team, James Scully. James, always a pleasure to work with you, and it's been great seeing you on here this morning with us.
Well, it's been great to be here. This is my second morning. Caitlin, good morning to you. Joe, Scott, everybody watching. I'm up on the 4th floor looking out over the finish line. Going to have a great view of the horses on the track. I'll have some thoughts on the post position draws yesterday. And I'm excited to see the Japanese horses continue to train towards the Kentucky Derby 149 this Saturday, Joe.
Well, thank you, James and Caitlin. We're going to take a look at the field for Kentucky Derby 149. And Scott, obviously, the first order of business is who drew inside, who might be compromised by that, and then who wants to go forward, and how's that going to play out in and out of the first.
Yeah, I mentioned not being any big losers, but I did think the 1 hit show, 2 verifying, 3 2 fills, and 5 tap it twice were amongst those that were with disadvantageous draws. The inside horses. Hit show hasn't relaxed that well. 2 fills, I wanted more of an outside post for. Tap it twice, we've talked a lot about. Not quite the 1 or the 2 hole, but he's still going to have to work out a trip. Kind of a hard horse to ride as we turn to the second page. Not many losers here, and the favorite and the third choice, Forte at 3-1, Angel of Empire at 8-1. Maybe a little bit further in would have been a slight bit better, but I think those connections have to be very pleased with those draws.
3 on the outside looking in. The first of those, the Dale Romans trained Cyclone Mischief, were there to be a defection before Friday morning at 9 a.m. That horse would get in, followed by Mandarin Hero and King Russell. Now, the Kentucky Derby is a race like no other. The challenge for the connections is handling the pressure, but also soaking in this tremendous experience.
Well, the Kentucky Derby isn't just a great sporting event. It is what I like to call a landmark cultural event.
Kentucky Derby is way beyond your imagination of the pressure it puts on you. It'd be like going in the Super Bowl the first time, and that's what the Derby is.
It's the 3-year-olds that are about to go 1.25 miles, the most important race of their life.
You feel like you're going to Coliseum. You know, within the Roman Empire, you know, like, and they shouting and yelling, and when it happens, you can't believe it. Because the Derby is a completely different kind of animal.
Well, you've been training horses for over 25 years, but this is your first Kentucky Derby walkover. What's your impression of this scene?
It's crazy.
First of all, if you're a young trainer in the Kentucky Derby, you're not prepared for what happens. You think you are. You think you're going to be able to handle it. It is so much more and so overwhelming, especially the first one.
I can't talk. It's too much. It's too much. Too much.
I didn't realize how much media coverage there was. I was a little green, you know, because that's a lot.
So when you add all those elements and you add all those fans, you might be a great trainer. You might be a great jockey. But Kentucky Derby Day is different.
It doesn't matter how tough it is. It's a little rainy, a little fun. Feet are getting wet, but we're here. We're here. Enjoy it. And we're having fun.
People have asked me about the Derby, and I said, just remember, you're here. You've already won. Now, anything else you get is frosting on the cake.
And they're off in the Kentucky Derby.
I'm joined here by trainer Larry Ravelli, trainer of Two Phils. You made it. You had a chance to see these all-time greats speaking about their first time at the Kentucky Derby. Tell me what your first time means to you and your staff.
Well, it means a lot. It's everybody puts a lot of hard work and effort into it. It's all those mornings every day at 5 o'clock, every day, all day, not many vacations. It's nice. It's a big dance.
It is, and this is the first time for everyone involved with Two Phils being at the Kentucky Derby. Can you tell me a little bit more about this horse's story and how he ended up getting here?
Well, it's a long story. Probably don't have that much time, but he was in a horse sale that I was attending and wasn't getting much action. The owners wanted to sell him, and they knew a friend of mine. They said, send him to Ravelli. He's good with 2-year-olds, and they sent me the horse. I liked him enough to sell him to in-house to my buddy Vinny Foglia and his mom Patricia, and after that they got on the phone, negotiated a little bit of a deal, and the rest is history.
You've had him up at Hawthorne. He's had a few works there. Won the race at Turfway, worked recently at Hawthorne just a couple of days ago and ended up shipping in a little bit later. Can you tell me why you ended up kind of keeping him at the home base rather than shipping here earlier on?
It's funny, a good buddy of mine, Wesley Ward, called me right after we knew we were in the race, and he said, Riv, you come here every year, you come to Keeneland, you ship into Churchill, and I only bring a select few, and we usually win. We do well. He goes, and you win. He goes, how'd you do it? I go, what do you mean, how'd I do it? He goes, how'd you do it? He goes, right there from Hawthorne, right? I said, yep. He goes, keep them there. And I agreed with him, and it was good advice. Not out of his surroundings, stay there as long as I could. I got the whole barn, it's all mine, all his grooms, all the hot walkers. He gets to stay at home as long as we could.
So these aren't super unfamiliar surroundings to him here. Does it add a little bit of an extra level of comfort the way he looked on the track yesterday, kind of being somewhat familiar with Churchill Downs and being a graded stakes winner over this surface?
Yeah, it's really on him. He's really a cool horse. Nothing really shakes him or rattles him at all. Like I said, he likes to sleep during the day. I don't think the crowd's going to be an issue at all. So that's one part of the deal that I really don't have to worry about.
All right, Larry, thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Larry Ravelli, trainer of Two Phil's. First Kentucky Derby for all involved, and I can't imagine the excitement.
Man who moves his horses around like chess pieces, and the king of his barn, Two Phil's, is at Churchill Downs for Kentucky Derby 149. First-time trainers include Larry Ravelli with Two Phil's, also Ben Colebrook with Raise Cane, the Japanese connections with Derma, Sotogake, and Continuar. And what an experience, Scott, for them, the first-time riders, which we'll talk about later, to own a horse that makes it here, particularly for some that have been in the business for a long time. I mean, that was a great piece. You really feel the emotional part of it.
Yeah, when I got to see the piece before the Larry interview with Caitlin, great job by both of them. That kind of got me fired up more for the week. And I'm sure Ben Colebrook, along with Larry Ravelli, Japanese trainers, of course, happy to be here. Ben Colebrook, Kentucky residents, got to be absolutely fired up to have Raise Cane in, even with the long shot.
That was a great video at the Kentucky Derby Museum, too, that'll really get you fired up for the Derby. They've got the Secretariat exhibit for the 50-year anniversary as well. So if you get an opportunity, make sure you check this out. Disarm for Steve Asmussen worked yesterday. We're going to take a look at that momentarily. Scott, this horse continues to impress me. He's moving in the right direction. Is he like Gun Runner in that maybe he runs, third in the Kentucky Derby or gets a placing in the Derby and winds up being an even better horse moving forward once he ages and matures a little bit?
He might run huge on Saturday, but it's likely that, like you said, he's going to continue to get better. He's eligible for a non-winners of 1X race, but he has looked as good as anyone out here as we see him during his 4-furlong drill yesterday.
James, I've liked this horse from the beginning. I picked him to win the Louisiana Derby. He ran second. Nothing wrong with that performance. Closing in the King's Barn, slow pace, and then ran third in the Lexington, a race he didn't need to win. How do you evaluate all of that?
I like the Louisiana Derby, and we talked about the Lexington. I don't think that Steve Asmussen wanted to put too much into that race. So I don't look at it as a negative that he ran a non-threatening third. I do think the main goal is the Kentucky Derby, and the fact that he worked fast 9 days after the Lexington, very positive sign. He's a colt, might not be 30-1, could be 15 or 18-1 Disarm. He's getting a lot of buzz, Joe and Scott. And to me, he's a horse I'll be using like in trifecta, superfecta tickets, at least on the bottom part, because he is doing so well.
And Caitlin, you've liked what you've seen from him physically, and you liked what you heard from Steve Asmussen about how this horse is coming in.
I did. I had a chance to ask him at the draw, kind of, needing that extra race to get the extra points in the Lexington. Didn't have to win that race, and it kind of was my impression that they were there to win, but not overly kind of asking this horse too much. Obviously needed to get third or better. He ended up getting third, but it seems like the fitness that he got from the Lexington and these maintenance works that he has turned out all for the better.
Not exactly the way Steve Asmussen had it planned, but he seems pretty happy as Disarm has sent a smile over to him.
Very pleased. Obviously a serious move with him last Monday. Have had a very good week since then. Just want to keep him comfortable, loose, happy, hydrated, and relaxed. Went over the racetrack very nicely. Came back, drank a little water, cooled out really nice. Went back in the stalls, been hungry ever since. which is what we like to see from him. Things have not went as smoothly this year as they did last year with Epicenter as far as a race schedule, getting to the races. But I think as long as we're 100% come first Saturday in May, but we feel very confident in him and think that he's a horse with a lot of talent, and he's setting on the best race of his life. All indications have been great. I want him to continue to look as focused on the racetrack as he has to this point. There's a lot going on this week here, a lot of distractions, and I really think that he is, while training, he has kept his head in the game and been very focused.
Steve has always said that he thought this horse had more to give, and that focus could really be a difference maker for Disarm come Saturday. One of the most heartbreaking defeats in the history of the Derby. No trainer has won more races, Scott, than Steve Asmussen. It looked like he had it won last year with Epicenter, but here comes Rich Strike at 80-1. He winds up savaging the outrider after the race. Just kind of a strange situation and a weird way to get beat.
Yeah, without a doubt, Epicenter 3-year-old of the year. Ran a huge Derby, ran a real big Preakness. And then Gunrunner, Joe. I mean, we talked about him because of Disarm. It's his father. And Gunrunner was, moving forward, ran third, wasn't quite at his best. And Curlin was a young horse at that time. We know how good he's become.
Right. Steve's so good at, turning these young horses into really good older horses. And, Kentucky Derby is a huge race, but it's all about the big picture in the end. Let's take a look at the Brisnet speed ratings coming into the Kentucky Derby. We're going to take a look at the last 3 starts, and we want to bring James Scully in for this. You see James 2 fills with that 107 huge number, the fastest one. That A indicates all weather. The MY indicates muddy. All other numbers that you see up there indicate fast. And, of course, no numbers on Dermasoda Gake.
That's right, Dermasata Gake. He and Continuar and Mandan Hero on the AE list, all international horses, no Brisnet speed ratings. We'll see the top 5 all have triple-digit speed ratings in their last start or in any of their previous 3 starts. That's a pretty top-heavy group of 5, Joe. And then when we turn the page, we'll also see verifying as part of that list. So typically, I mean, there's been a couple exceptions in the last 30 years, but typically the Kentucky Derby winner has earned a triple-digit Brisnet speed rating in one of their prep races. We have 6 in this year's field that have met that criteria, Joe.
The Kentucky Derby draw was yesterday, and following the draw, we caught up with some of the connections to find out what they thought about their post positions.
I like that position for him. Very big horse, as we mentioned, a lot of body mass to him. I think he'll hold his spot really well. He's in the capable hands of Joel. Just get a decent jump away from the gates, and I think that he'll make a very good showing on Saturday.
Well, the key for both of them is that first step to get away cleanly, and then, Tappa Trice isn't super quick, but hopefully he can get into the first turn, save some ground, get into a good position. Kings Barn probably be somewhat more forwardly placed.
I think they're good. Jason's Road hopefully can break running and get a good early position. Flavian obviously knows Angel of Empire really well, obviously breezing a time or two, and obviously gave him a great ride last time. So, I think it should work out well. Well, he overcame an outside post to run very well last time. Now he's going to have to overcome an inside post. I think it's okay. We've got the, tighter starting gate now. It works out well for the Derby. I don't think it eliminates the inside horses like it used to with the auxiliary gate. So I'm going to, take a positive spin on it. Hopefully he and Verifying can get good trips from down inside.
Fans gathering here at Churchill Downs. We do race today. This is 5-0 Tuesday at Churchill Downs. Looking very forward to the live racing action beginning at 12:45. We've got fans watching from all over the country and the world. We've got Miguel from Puerto Rico, Genevieve from Quebec, Omar in El Paso, Floyd from Ohio, just a few joining us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. If you have a question, if you have an opinion, send them to us using the hashtag KYDerby. Talked a little bit about the Kentucky Derby draw. We have the Oaks draw as well. Wet Paint, the 5-2 morning line favorite for that one, drawing post position number 7. We'll take a closer look at the Kentucky Oaks field of 14 when we return on the Kentucky Derby Morning Work Show.
Race to Twin Spires and register with code GET200 to start earning your new player bonus of up to $200. Watch and bet on some of the world's best racing and check out our expert picks and weekly promotions. Twin Spires. Download the app now.
Does your horse have the stomach to compete at this level? Your answer is likely yes, if your horse uses Reline GI. Reline GI is an all-natural supplement made with patented stomach buffering HA that helps support your horse's gastric health. Plus, it's Clean Sport certified, so you know it's safe to use while racing. Learn more about Reline GI, because even a horse with the heart of a champion needs a healthy stomach to race at their peak.
Like the Kentucky Derby, Woodford Reserve Bourbon is a spectacle for the senses.
We are back on the Kentucky Derby morning work show. You see the track maintenance during the downtime for training here, as we are now just 10 minutes away from the scheduled training for the Kentucky Derby and Oaks horses. They'll be out there and, again, putting the finishing touches as we get closer to Friday and Saturday. Kentucky Oaks draw was yesterday, Scott, 14 in that field. Brad Cox with a heavy hand in that race, as well as the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, with a 14-horse field and not a 20, and kind of a average amount of early speed. I don't think there were going to be many winners, many losers in that draw, but as we dive into the field, we'll talk a little bit more about who maybe got minor winners and losers.
Yeah, wet paint and out-the-back closer really didn't matter all that much where she drew. She draws post position number 7 with Flavion Pratt. She's the 5-2 morning line favorite. The other Brad Cox trained runner, Botanical, just to her inside. You know, you would think that they would want to try to avoid her getting dirt in the face. She's only raced on synthetic.
Yeah, that was what was most noteworthy about the draw to me. That kind of tactical speed horses drew the inside spots, a couple closers, and then the outside horses is where we see the majority of the speed. Flying Connection, Darth Vader, I have them projected as the top 2. Botanical right around there as well. Maybe Pretty Mischievous you could call the biggest loser with the far outside draw. Tyler Gaffalione will be aboard, though.
That's a tough post for her. Pretty Mischievous also adding blinkers for the first time in the Kentucky Oaks coming up on Friday. 3 on the outside looking in, including Julia Shining, who I think if she got in would be one of the favorites. All right, let's take a look at the favorites. Wet Paint, along with the Alice Look of this work from April 27th. And you're going to see the Alice Look on the inside, Wet Paint on the outside. James, we're going to go to you here. Wet Paint, a deep out-the-back closer. There's some speed in this race. It's a 1.8 mile distance. I mean, all those factors come into play when trying to pick and bet on the winner.
Yeah, absolutely, Joe. And one thing about Wet Paint, she's been flattered by some of the competitions she's beaten. She defeated Finding Purpose at Oaklawn Park. She came back and won the Ashland. And another Gambling Girl, I think she defeated her, and she ran second. So definitely going to be running late and has a class edge, it appears, on her rivals, Joe.
Caitlin, watching Botanical train in the morning, she seems like she handles the dirt just fine, and I know you've talked to Brad Cox and the team extensively about how she's handling it.
All indications, looking at her physically, the way she moves over it, and what Brad has said is that she handles it really, really well. I thought she drew pretty well, too. I think she's going to be able to clear from the gate. We were worried about her drawing not so favorably and maybe getting a little bit of dirt kicked in her face. That would be a new experience, but I didn't think overall that she drew too bad, and I think she'll be able to get a good position from post number 6.
Botanical, Wet Paint, the Alice Look, a trio of Oaks fillies for Brad Cox. We caught up with him in regard to the post position draw and several other of the connections.
I mean, I think she'll break running. That ultimately will be up to Chris going into the first turn where he wants her and what everyone else is doing. But I'd say more forward than maybe mid-pack, and then obviously Valley's looks probably, you know, similar, maybe not quite as close. Just kind of see how it works out.
That was fine. It came down, she was one of the last 2 outs. It was 1 or 3, and I guess we'd probably prefer 3 over 1, but I think it's important for her. She's going to need to save some ground all the way around there to have her best shot.
I don't think there's any pressure. I'm just going to sit back and try to enjoy the ride. The only pressure that we have is putting it on myself. This is a big deal. It's a race I've always wanted to win, and now we have a great opportunity to do so. I'm happy. I feel like there's enough speed that it will clear, kind of loosen things up down on the inside for us. She's okay being drawn inside. When Ray Lou finds a hole, she'll respond, and hopefully in a big way.
Heard from Norm Cassie, biggest race of his life, talking about first-timers in these races. This will be his first opportunity at a Kentucky Oaks. We're going to switch back over to some Kentucky Derby horses, including Lord Miles, who just recently arrived here, one of 4 homebreds in the field. Wood Memorial winner, hasn't produced a Kentucky Derby winner, Scott, since Funny Side in 2003, and he ran second in the race.
Yeah, rebounded off a couple of poor efforts in Florida. Grade 3 events in the Holy Bull Tampa Bay Derby off the board, but part of a 3-horse blanket finish, rewarded his backers in a big way in that Wood Memorial, Joe, at 59-1.
Saffie Joseph has burst onto the scene in recent years, as there you see Lord Miles, 2 previous Kentucky Derby runners, New York Traffic and White Barrio. More on that in a moment. James, Lord Miles on the track. I mean, he won the Wood Memorial at a big price. A hit show, the big favorite, was second. It's just really hard to get too confident with the horses coming out of the wood, at least in recent years.
Yeah, Scott mentioned it. That blanket finish hasn't produced a Derby winner in a long time, the Wood Memorial. And with Lord Miles, he's got to avoid a regression, Joe. That Wood Memorial was so much faster than any race he had run previously. He also got a favorable trip close to the pace, so worried about his trip and a bounce, Joe.
When Saffie Joseph won the Pennsylvania Derby in 2019 with Math Wizard, we're like, who is this guy? Now his 25 graded stakes wins as we take a look at him by the numbers. A White Barrio 16th, the New York Traffic 8th over the course of the last couple of years, and it looks like he's going to be a fairly regular Kentucky Derby and Oaks participant moving forward.
One would think. He wins a lot of races in Florida, still kind of working out the kinks, at least compared to how much success he has in Florida here in the Bluegrass. White Barrio, Joe, part of a tremendous Kentucky Derby undercard. He'll be in the Churchill Downs.
Yeah, Scott on the drive in this morning was telling me about the undercard races, full fields, very competitive, a lot of star power outside of the Kentucky Derby and the Oaks. The cards are tremendous. Sun Thunder, by probably the top stallion going right now and into mischief, just a one-time winner, one of 2 horses, Scott, including Bill Mott's trainee that are going to be adding a Rocket Can. They're going to be adding blinkers for the Derby.
Rocket Can, kind of a tactical speed, adding the blinkers might have him really close to the pace. Sun Thunder, the blinkers aren't going to have him anywhere near the pace, but maybe get him into the race earlier. He's been very, very pace dependent thus far through 6 starts.
Taking a look at Sun Thunder on the racetrack yesterday in the blinkers, and Caitlin, I believe the plan is to work him today.
I believe that is the plan. I haven't seen him yet out here. The only horses for the Derby or the Oaks that are on the track currently, since they just went over the track, the Japanese horses are standing not too far away from me in the chute. They're actually staring at me right now. But Sun Thunder should be on the track pretty soon, scheduled to work, and I really like the way he has moved over the track wearing the blinkers. His ears have been pricked, and I think this is the best really I've seen him look.
Brian Hernandez Jr. will be aboard. Ken McPeak, the trainer. Let's take a look at Kenny by the numbers in the Kentucky Derby. He's got 1 second-place finish. It was with his first ever Kentucky Derby horse in 1995, Tahana Run. And outside, Scott, of these Derby numbers, he's been the runner-up 3 times in the Kentucky Oaks. Swiss Skydiver most recently in 2020.
Tahana Run, second, and like you said in the first start, to Thunder Gulch. Big effort there. Hasn't quite gotten back to that effort, if you will. But like you mentioned, Brian Hernandez Jr. rides for him a lot. Those 2 had some success at Keeneland. This meet coming in pretty hot here. 2 chances last year. Smile Happy, Tis the Bomb, neither hit the board.
He had King Fury in 2021, who came down with a fever on Friday and had to scratch the day before the Kentucky Derby. All right, social media questions coming in from all over the country, all over the world. We've got some good ones as you see the fans gathering here at Churchill Downs on a beautiful 5-0 Tuesday. Let's take a question from Andrew in Saratoga Springs, one of James' favorite places on earth. So I thought it would be suiting to give you this question, James. Which Derby horses have the best pedigree to get a 1.25 miles?
Yeah, that's well, you know, I mean, we'll start right away with horses that are by King's Barn is by Uncle Mo, who sired 2016 Derby winner Nyquist, and he's out of a Tappet mare. And I just think that that's like a good mix of speed and stamina in his bloodlines. Some other favorable ones include Into Mischief, who's by two-time Kentucky Derby winning sire. Rocket Can by two-time winning Kentucky Derby sire Into Mischief, and out of a Tappet mare as well. Those would be two candidates right off the bat, King's Barn and Rocket Can, Joe.
I'll throw one in the mix at a big price. We just talked a little about Lord Miles, might be up against it from a number of perspectives, but great pedigree here. The son of Curlin out of a Majestic Warrior mare, some really solid pedigree there. Could be moving forward at the right time. Distance based on pedigree shouldn't be an issue, Joe.
Thanks for that question. We'll ID some more pedigrees in the next couple of days before the big dances on Friday and Saturday. The horses are coming out onto the racetrack for the designated training period. You see the Kentucky Derby horses in the yellow saddle towels, the Kentucky Oaks horses in the pink saddle towels. Longines Kentucky Oaks coming up on Friday. The Kentucky Derby presented by Woodford Reserve coming up on Saturday. We're going to see a cast of characters for both races in just a few.
Race to Twin Spires and register with code GET200 to start earning your new player bonus of up to $200. Watch and bet on some of the world's best racing and check out our expert picks and weekly promotions. Twin Spires. Download the app now.
Does your horse have the stomach to compete at this level? Your answer is likely yes, if your horse uses Reline GI. Reline GI is an all-natural supplement made with patented stomach buffering HA that helps support your horse's gastric health. Plus, it's Clean Sport certified, so you know it's safe to use while racing. Learn more about Reline GI, because even a horse with the heart of a champion needs a healthy stomach to race at their peak.
We are back on the Kentucky Derby morning workout show. Japanese horses maybe going to get a little blowout this morning along with Sun Thunder. We will keep our eyes peeled for those horses. The rest of them just out there, getting a little jog in, a little gallop in. We are just days away. The heavy lifting has been done. Final workouts were this past weekend. We saw Disarm with the final workout yesterday, and we'll throw it down to Caitlin first. This is our first appearance of Race Kane, who arrived just before the deadline yesterday morning before the draw, Caitlin.
Yep, getting a good look at him. He just came out of the Lucas Gap with Affirmative Lady. They walked out there together. He's a little bit more of a smaller horse than I was maybe expecting. I did see him run at Turfway, and I guess maybe I didn't have the right impression of him. He's just a little smaller, definitely more of a compact horse, but kind of has that bigger hind end on him, but definitely a horse that's making a good first impression. He's going out now, kind of going the opposite way around the first turn. He's just trotting, and ears are pricked, and he looks pretty good.
Deep closer, one of two sired by Violence in this field. The other one, the Kentucky Derby favorite, Forte. There's Derma Sotogake, and we're expecting him to do a little something here today, Scott.
Sounds like Derma Sotogake and Mandarin Hero are scheduled to work 5 furlongs apiece.
Wow.
Interesting tactics, but there he is out there. We've talked about it a little. I mean, he was not quite throwing his head around the last couple of days like he was earlier. Never knew really what to make of that, not having seen the horse a lot, but looks a little bit more relaxed as we're getting closer to the big race.
He's going to break off, it looks like, for a work here, and he certainly wants to do more. I mean, the riders fighting him a little bit, and we'll see. They probably want to go slow early and really finish off this work. James, he's certainly feeling good. I'm not sure. We saw a little bit of this with the Japanese last year where they were tugging a little bit and headstrong in their works. We'll see how he finishes up down the lane here, James.
Yeah, I mean, we just, we're not, American racing fans aren't familiar with these Japanese training methods. They know what they want, and he definitely looks like he's going at a pretty solid clip. Good-looking horse in appearance on the track, and we'll see what this final time is, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, he went slow early under restraint, and you guys said it, James and Scott. He finished up really nicely there. He's going to have a nice gallop out, it looks like. I mean, whether or not you want to do this, a handful of days before the race, the American trainers would not. The Japanese have their own way of doing things, Caitlin, but we've talked about it time and time again, how much success they've had around the world, most notably in Dubai and recent Breeders' Cups as well.
Saudi Arabia as well. Same connections that Continuar has that Pantalasa had when he won the Saudi Cup back in February. But Derma Sotogake, I like that work from him. Obviously going to have to get the final times and splits as they come in, but he did want to do more early on. He did get into that middle part of his work where they do kind of push him a little bit more and then galloped out very well. So I would think that Connections would be happy with what he just did.
We will await those splits in final time. Kevin Kirstein, a huge help providing us that information. We'll pass it along to you when we have it. Mandarin Hero also did a little something on the track this morning. We have that on tape. We're going to get that to you as well as the Japanese training just a handful of days out from the Kentucky Derby and doing a little bit more serious work than maybe the American counterparts. Let's take a look at Mandarin Hero here. And Caitlin, a much smaller individual than Derma Sotogake.
Good things come in small packages. I am a big fan of this horse and the way he moves, and I think it just kind of speaks to how well he ran in the Santa Anita Derby. He had traffic trouble. He's small. He's able to fit kind of through those spots, and he would be a horse that I think would run really, really well in a race like the Derby. These Japanese horses are used to these big 20-horse fields. He's small. He fits in gaps. He has the right running style. So if he were to get in the race, he's definitely a contender in my opinion.
It's definitely interesting, Caitlin, that a Santa Anita Derby runner-up is not in the field. They've had so much success over the years with Messier last year didn't run well in the race but came in with a big resume. Medina Spirit 2021, Authentic in 2020, game winner, a very wide voyage in the Derby in 2019. He was the runner-up in the Santa Anita Derby. Bolt Oro 2018, Battle of Midway 2017. These are serious horses that finished second in the Santa Anita Derby, but Mandarin Hero on the outside looking in.
That's really good info. James, how do you go about evaluating horses like this, Mandarin Hero, Derma Sotogake? Do you really dig into these international races, watch replays, try to find speed figures? What is your method?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely trying to dig, watch the videos of all three horses races in Japan, obviously in Saudi Arabia and Dubai, and just trying to glean information from international racing observers. I look at Mandarin Hero. I think the fact that he overcame adversity in the Santa Anita Derby is a plus for him. Good, a lot of these horses are going to face some adversity in the 20-horse field Saturday. A real positive sign if he can get in, but he's up against it from 3 out on the AE list, Joe.
What a treat for all those fans just standing down there by the rail, taking in all of these Derby and Oaks horses just days away from the big event. There you see the blinkered Sun Thunder, and Caitlin talked about the blinkers for Rocket Can, blinkers for Sun Thunder. I know you've talked to Ken McPeak. I know you've talked extensively to Brian Hernandez, and the thought would be to maybe get him in the race a little bit more because we know he has some finishing punch.
That was kind of the consensus that I was able to get from both of them, and he's looked really, really good in the blinkers. I'm kind of wondering, as good as he looks, obviously he worked well with him, going to work pretty soon momentarily coming up now. We'll see how his second work does with him as he's getting ready to get into his gallop and get started now. But I'm kind of wondering, obviously we'll see when the race comes, but why he wasn't wearing them before now. He just looks so good with them on.
Maybe because, with a dead closer like he is, you don't want him to be too aggressive early on. Give him some chances to kind of learn things on his own and maybe adapt from there. But this is a horse, Joe, that hasn't had good setups in his last two races, the Louisiana Derby and the Bluegrass. The Bluegrass, you could argue, was an honest run up front, but they didn't go fast. The Louisiana Derby, they went slow. When he's gotten on his paces to run out like he did in the Risen Star, he's been pretty good. And he finished a good second to Angel of Empire under a very good ride from Brian Hernandez, 3 back in that Risen Star.
It's interesting to note, James, and we're going to take a look at this work here, but in the field last year of Kentucky Derby horses, only 2 horses had blinkers on. Barber Road was one, Rich Strike was the other. Now, I don't have it in front of me, but I think there's probably 5 or 6 this year that have blinkers. You want to give these horses an opportunity as young horses to learn how to be competitive. I would say, would you agree that the blinkers are kind of sort of a little bit of a Band-Aid?
Yeah, for sure. And, just keep his head in the game. They're not going to change his run style. Some horses like Rocket Can, they could be more forward in the Derby, adding blinkers because they have some tactical ability. Sun Thunder doesn't. So I think it's just keep him more focused on the task at hand. And, if he's taken to him in his morning training, that could be a positive sign. Because the real concern is if you have a speed horse, you add blinkers and they run off early and you can't control them. And we saw that happen in 2013 with Palace Malice.
We see this, Scott, with blinkers on with Brad Cox. He likes to start his young horses with blinkers on, some of them, and eventually take the blinkers off once they have a little bit more maturity.
Yeah, that's a good sign. They don't need the equipment to kind of keep them focused, a sign that they're growing into themselves, growing into their talents, mentally, that is. And Sun Thunder finishing up with the gallop out here, had a maintenance work back on April 26th, and 5 days out. Kenny McPeak looking to get that first Derby. Brian Hernandez Jr. has won a lot of races here under the Twin Spires. Hard to imagine how excited he would be if he could get to the wire first.
No doubt about it. Caitlin, that was a much slower work than Mandarin Hero, just a real easy work. But you see it, on the backstretch here, just letting him gallop out a little bit, but a very controlled and, easy-paced gallop out.
Definitely more of an even-keeled work, but letting him get that long gallop out to make sure he does get the most of what he just did and does kind of get that extra level of fitness coming into the race. So I would say since they were looking for something perhaps a bit more easy, they would probably be happy with that. But once again, like Brandon and Rosie, I'm not necessarily an expert, but I thought, it looked like he got the most out of it that he could.
Derma Sotogake and Mandarin Hero, thanks to Kevin Kirstein from the 3 furlongs, 13-2, 37 flat, 49-3, and 104-1 for Derma Sotogake. Mandarin Hero, 13-4, 38 flat, and 105-3, Joe.
Yeah, it looks like the published works will be 49-3 for Derma, and it looks like that might be a 105-3 published work for Mandarin Hero based on what I'm reading here. But again, we're just days out, and visually, the Derma Sotogake work looked pretty good.
Yeah, I thought it was a step forward from what we've seen.
We've got a Derby horse. Is this Tappa Trice?
All the Fletchers.
Schooling in the starting gate. Again, we talk about the process. We had a great question from a fan the other day about the preparations, and this is all part of it. And not only for the horses to get familiar with the starting gate, James, but for the starting gate crew to get familiar with the horses. They all have their little idiosyncrasies. Some horses are tougher to load than others, and it's very important for the gate crew to have a handle on these horses leading up to the big days.
Yeah, that is for certain, and definitely, here we go. Have the Mage on the camera galloping on the track. We've seen him make a good appearance. Been a little bit high-strung when Mage has been out training, but looks really calm and relaxed this morning, making a good physical impression, Joe.
The key for this horse is, with the lack of experience especially, but for any horse that has not gotten out of the gates well, in any of his 3 starts, I know he wired out the field when we're getting into the things in the debut effort, but he has to get out of the gate well. If he gets surrounded with that mid-post, the 8-hole, it's going to spell a lot of trouble. He's going to be unable to make the kind of move he made in the Florida Derby when he almost beat Forte. The talent is there, has to figure things out from the gate to have any sort of
Such a huge disadvantage. And I think that's a part, and you, Travis, Caitlin, and myself are going to do a Spaces tonight on Twitter. Looking very forward to that. If you want to, join us for that, we're going to really dig deep into the handicapping, the betting of the race. And when horses don't break well from the starting gate, a lot of times it's a trend. It's a lot of times a situation where they can't break that habit, and that's a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, and a lot of times people will use that as a trouble trip excuse, and if it's only once in an outlier,
or if they get slammed or that's not their fault.
But when you've had 3 starts and it's been a trend, now you come into the Kentucky Derby, 19 other rivals, you're drawn in between most of them. It's going to be a challenge, but if Mage can break well, he has serious talent.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Just 3 races. He's one of the horses in this field that has a lot of upside. This one's a little bit tough to gauge. Race Kane, 1-turn mile winner in the slop at Aqueduct. He ran okay last time. He's a horse that's going to try to pick up, James, as many pieces as he can in the Derby stretch.
Yeah, I mean, he qualified in a 1-turn mile in that Gotham, so his 5th in the Bluegrass left something to be desired in my mind. I mean, you look at his last 3 speed ratings, 94, 90, 80. Race Kane is definitely going to have to find much, much more, and it's a tall task to increase your speed ratings significantly in the Kentucky Derby, Scott.
Well, James, your analysis never leaves anything to be desired. As we move from the Derby to the Oaks, and here is Darth Vader. Great story was told about the naming of this horse by Travis Stone yesterday. Dorothy is the owner's wife. They're big Star Wars fans. They wanted to include the name in the name, so they came up, Scott, with Darth Vader, and we'll see if the Force is with her.
The daughter of Gervin, a Florida-bred filly. Definitely pretty sprinty pedigree, and has tried two turns twice in her career. Once back as a 2-year-old, ran third, and last time in the Gulfstream Park Oaks. She was very good in the Devona Dale, but that was the 1-turn mile event, though. I do think she drew pretty favorably. It is an outside draw, but drawing right outside Flying Connection should allow Luis Saez, if he rides. If Julia Shining doesn't get in, he will ride Darth Vader, and he should get a very favorable stalking voyage.
She looked like she was going to win last time. She don't want to go a mile and an eighth. That's just my opinion.
No, I'm with you. I mean, a lot of these Florida breds are more sprinty types, and just looking at her past performances, it goes along with that pedigree.
Let's go back over to Caitlin. Mimi Kikuchi. Now, I know you like the Japanese horses in the Kentucky Derby, but we haven't got your opinion on Mimi.
Well, she is. She's won her last 3 over in Dubai, and she actually has a really cool story. Her trainer, he only has 10% of his vision, so the way he trains his horses, he does a lot of it kind of listening to them and just kind of how they feel, and there's kind of a little bit of an emotional connection there. So she has a really cool story coming in. Really similar type of horse to one that came in last year that was transferred to Todd Pletcher's barn. Her name is slipping me, but she was a horse that I really liked in the Oaks last year. Shahama. Yes, Shahama. She has a very similar resume to Shahama, maybe not as big and as imposing as Shahama was, but she's won her last 3 races, and I think she deserves to be here in a race that's pretty wide open.
It's pretty wide open.
It is wide open. The rail, I don't know how I feel about it. Those are 2 real small fields she beat, like Caitlin referenced, over in Dubai. Comes in off a freshening. Difficult, like many of these overseas horses, for me, Joe, and I know you agree, to have a real super strong opinion, but we dig into the data we can, we watch the races, and try to do the best we can.
Rocket can or can't he? We'll find out on Saturday. Good horse moving forward, you would think. And, you know, he doesn't have the blinkers on here, James. He will be wearing blinkers for the first time in the Derby. This is one of the horses that I haven't really been a big fan of leading in the Derby as far as, you know, relative to the rest of the field, his chances. But he's impressed me with his training, and, you know, maybe this is a horse that the blinkers will help considerably. Bill Mott certainly thinks so.
Yeah, I think so, too, because in the Fountain of Youth, that's his fastest race on paper. He ran second to Forte that day, but he was able to race within a couple lengths of the pace. We had an up-close stocky trip that day. He was 6th early in the Arkansas Derby and never fired, so perhaps being a little bit more forward and being part of the action early will help his chances on Saturday. And he's trained really well. He's got a bullet work, has come back, worked well in blinkers in his last move, a maintenance move for Bill Mott. So there's some I think he's moving forward right now, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the far outside post, the 18-hole, could be a challenge, but with the blinkers and with the speed horses drawn to his inside, it could work out favorably. One thing I will note, spoke to Kevin Kirstein, who sees these horses throughout the year in the morning, and Rocket Ken has worked very well, but he's always been a good horse in terms of working in the mornings. I remember him being a steam horse last year when he had those 2 wins, or a win and a second here during the fall.
If you had to guess who will be on the lead past the opening quarter, opening half, this would be my selection. Reincarnate for California Connections, Tim Yakteen. We're going to send it back over to Caitlin Free here. You had a chance to talk to Tim, and, you know, he's got a rider, Reincarnate does, in Johnny Velasquez, who's not afraid to go forward.
No, I did have a chance to speak to him, and even before I spoke to him, that was kind of my feel that this was going to be this horse's best chance. He had some kind of rough luck trips in his most recent races where he kind of wasn't as close to lead as maybe they'd hoped, got in some traffic trouble. So I think this is his horse's best shot, being able to go forward. I do think it's interesting, though. Kingsbarns is another candidate I thought that would be one to go forward, and Reincarnate drawn right next door.
Caitlin speaks of the troubled trip, I think, most in the Rebel, where he did get shuffled back early and was forced to check, but I might have benefited him to some extent because they went really fast, horses from the back end of the field, and that were able to stay out of trouble, finishing well. He ended up finishing third. Then last time out, I didn't see any excuse at all in the Arkansas Derby. Now, he opted to stalk just off the early pace that day under Hall of Famer Johnny V, who will ride him here. That didn't work. His best efforts are on the front end, like Caitlin, I think, and you. I think he's going to be very, very prominent in the early going.
James, unanimous?
No, I think Verifying's going to be set in the post from post 2, and I think Tyler's going to send. I thought it was an advantage. I didn't want to see him 4 or 5 deep going into the first turn Verifying, and I think he's going to send from the inside. I think Reincarnate, he's your betting favorite, but I'm going to play Verifying to be shown the way early, Joe.
Confidence.
Yeah, no. I mean, I can see that. Tyler's got to go.
I agree. There's really no option with Verifying. Confidence games inside him, too. I mean, I could see James' point for sure, the way the draw came up, all things being equal, and if Reincarnate was inside those horses, I'd be much more confident.
2 Phils on the racetrack for the second consecutive day. Had a chance to catch up with Larry Ravelli at the draw a little bit yesterday, and Caitlin caught up with him earlier this morning. And, you know, James, we'll start with you when it comes to the big win last time. We saw that huge Brisnet speed figure of 107, fastest in the field, but it came at Turfway. I thought he made, I'm not going to say a premature move, but he made the first move into 2 fast-paced races at Fairgrounds, and I thought, 2 solid preps from top to bottom in the LeCompte and the Risen Star. This is a horse that's going to be a price. I don't know about the 1.25 miles for him, but you have to be impressed with the way he won at Turfway.
I was impressed, and I've been impressed by both that race and the Risen Star. Those races are fast on paper. They're faster than his previous efforts. Really good positive sign. And while he's become a little bit more push button at age 3, able to sit mid-pack and finish with more gusto, he also has the tactical ability to sit right behind the leaders if necessary with Jared Loveberry. Little of an unorthodox path, training at Hawthorne for the Kentucky Derby, but 2 Phils looks like a talented colt who might be able to overcome winning a fast race on synthetic.
It's so funny. He just is a total pro out there. He's just taking everything in. He, is just kind of hanging out, watching the other horses train, sizing up the competition, kind of sort of like we are. All right, social media questions. We got a lot of people that love horse racing, follow it on a regular basis, that watch us. We've got people that follow occasionally, and a lot of newcomers. And we have a question coming in from a relative newcomer, I believe. Let's take a look at that question right now. And it's from Scott in Arizona. And Scott is going to ask Scott a question. When you say the word pace, Scott, what exactly do you mean?
No, that's a great question because, during Derby time, we talk to a lot more people that are not as familiar, whether it's media or fans that watch the race a couple years, and you realize you're using terms that are common to us. One of them is pace, Joe. And what we mean, when you're involved in the pace, that means you're up close. You're a speed horse. If you're not familiar with even that, that means you're one of the horses in front in the early going. We often talk about horses that are pace dependent. Well, some of them could be horses that need slow paces up front to be at their best, but oftentimes we're talking about horses that are late running types, much like Rich Strike was last year. He was pace dependent, and he got the pace to run at in the Kentucky Derby, and it was good enough for Sonny Leone to get up in time over Epicenter and Zandon. So pace kind of speaks to how fast they're going in the early stages for the most part.
All right, we got one more question in the queue here, Paul from Twitter. We don't have any in this year's field talking about geldings, and Paul wants to know why there are so few that do run in the Kentucky Derby. Few years ago, what was it, 2003, when Funny Side was a gelding and won the Kentucky Derby. I'm going to send this one over to Caitlin. This is Paul from Twitter, but Caitlin is going to answer it.
That's a good question, and I don't really have a definitive answer. I think a lot of it could possibly be that a lot of horses that are well-bred get into the Derby, not necessarily always well-bred, just kind of more of the fashionable ones seem to always end up being a few of the ones that make it to the Derby, and those horses you kind of want to hold off on gelding. You don't really do it unless it's necessary, and I think the United States is kind of one of those countries that will hold off on gelding a horse until it's absolutely necessary. So I just think this gelding a horse is kind of something that maybe you do a little bit later if they need it, or if they kind of, may end up not being, grade 1 quality type of horses. So that could have something a little bit to do with it, but it's a very peculiar question that I don't have a definitive answer to.
No, it's a good answer. I'm just going to tack onto it a little bit, Caitlin. Like, if you've got a horse that's got a lot of talent with a lot of pedigree, there's a slim chance that they could become a stallion, right? So you're going to wait as long as you can to go through the gelding process. Some horses just need to be gelded. They're manhandling, they're grooms, and they're hot walkers, and they're a danger to the barn. They'll settle down quite a bit after the gelding process, but you don't want to do it with a well-bred horse with talent unless you absolutely have to. That's why we see so few geldings in the Kentucky Derby. All right, Twin Spires, lots of great offers coming up this week, and every day it's the official betting partner of the Kentucky Derby of Churchill Downs. And I had a couple questions at the Dawn at the Downs last couple of days about how can I bet if I'm not going to be at Churchill? Well, here's your answer. TwinSpires.com, the very trusty and easy to use Twin Spires app. And it's got lots of great promotions. We're going to talk about one of them specifically right now, and I believe that is the money back offer. And it starts today. We're racing live today, the money back offer, and just explain to the fans what that is, please.
Yeah, every race this week, starting today all the way through the Derby and a couple of races after the Derby, place a $10 win bet, or you can place a win bet of any size, but you get up to $10 back if your win bet. If your horse that you bet to win finishes second or third, we have these bet back promotions all throughout the year. They're great. They're very popular. They make a ton of sense. It's like getting insurance. And then on big days like the Kentucky Derby all throughout the week, money back. What that means is the money is credited to your account much quicker instead of having to wait a day or two to get it back into your account.
Yeah, it's a little bit of insurance on your win bet. It's a great offer, and again, it does begin today. And for all of you new fans out there that are thinking about opening up a wagering account, we're going to give you an extra reason to do so.
Yes, code RACE25. You're going to enter that when you sign up for your account. You get a $25 risk-free bet. Pretty simple, Joe. Something a no-brainer to take advantage of here as we get that much closer to the Run for the Roses, but this is good. Starting today, we race in just a few hours.
All right, we are wrapping it up here on the Kentucky Derby Morning Work Show. Don't forget we do race this afternoon, 5:00 Tuesday, with a first post of 12:45 for a 9-race program. Watch and wager on Twin Spires. Scott, your final thought for today as we inch ever so closer to Derby weekend.
Yeah, I've been torn on what to do with Derma since he won the UAE Derby and started catching a lot of buzz. My initial thought was, well, if he's going to be the third choice or the second choice in the race, I'm going to fade him. I just don't think UAE Derby horses have proven enough in the Kentucky Derby. I was a little bit concerned with what I saw in the early part of his arrival here. Thought he looked good today in his work. Obviously we're not accustomed to that sort of drill just a few days out from the race, but like the way he finished, like the way he galloped out. I'm going to keep him at that B level, Derma.
All right, let's send it over to Caitlin Free next for her final thought on the day. Caitlin, you got to see the Japanese horses train and a whole lot more.
Definitely liked what I saw from all of the Japanese horses. Derma, great work for him. Mandarin Hero, a nice maintenance work that if he doesn't get in, could potentially set him up really well for the Preakness. So I like what I saw from both of them. Continuar got a lot of the footwork on the track this morning. So I thought all three of them looked good. And one other horse that really caught my eye was Affirmative Lady this morning. She was hanging over in the Lucas Gap. She just seems to be like a really sweet horse or exercise rider, and somebody on a pony were just loving on her. And she just seemed like she was really enjoying herself. So she was one that kind of caught my attention that maybe could factor in a little bit into my Oaks picks. I think she didn't draw all that bad, so she was one that caught my eye that maybe hadn't this morning, but just an overall pretty good morning for us here, and I'm thankful it's warmed up. But James, you got any final thoughts for me?
Yes, I'll echo those thoughts on two Phil's. Just thought he was cool as a cucumber, taking everything in. He looks like really like he's like peaking right now on the track. Thought Derma I did like that move and down the lane. He kept his head straight, ran straight to the wire, and appears to be training well in advance of the Derby. It would matter if whether he's good enough on Saturday. And I'll be back tomorrow. It's my last day on the work show, so I look forward to sharing my top 5 for the Derby and Kentucky Oaks, Joe.
Well, I just hope Derma Sotogake is one of your top 5 so I can hear you say his name again.
Looking forward to hearing what James comes up with this year. One of the great Kentucky Derby handicappers. Of course, he had it.
My final thoughts for today are, similar a little bit to Scott's with Derma Sotogake. It's like, I don't know what to do with him. You look at his form and you see the UAE Derby race and a horse that likes to sit mid-pack going to the lead. He looks impressive. Then the unconventional training. And there's, really only so many horses you can like, Scott, depending on your budget and how you're trying to piece together the pieces of the puzzle to try to cash some bets. I still don't absolutely know what to do with them. We finally got the post position, Scott. We got the morning line odds. Not that those are going to affect how I approach the race, but at least gives you some sort of a barometer. Now go back through my notes, go back through, the post positions, try to visualize everything, try to come up. I haven't made my top selection yet. I've got a pretty good idea as to who it's going to be, but looking really forward to rediving into the Kentucky Derby now that we have the post positions and everything in front of me.
If he comes away running from the 17 hole, I know that stat that the 17 holes never won.
That means nothing.
I care less about that.
Less than zero.
Yeah, so I think that draw actually is pretty favorable, assuming he comes out of the gate running. And, I'm a little bit torn on what to do with him as well. But like you said, you've got to take some stands in the Derby. I just don't know if he's one you have to take a stand with now that he's in the 10-1 range, probably instead of 6.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for the Kentucky Derby Morning Workout Show. Scott, our day is far from over. We do have live racing at Churchill today.
We do. It's back. We got 5 big days of racing starting today with 9, then we got 10 tomorrow, and then it gets into Thurby and 2 fantastic cards, the Oaks and the Kentucky Derby.
That's going to wrap it up for the Kentucky Derby Morning Work Show. We're going to get way more into the handicapping process, get some picks over the course of the next few days. James Scully tomorrow. Rosie Napravnik joins us again on the closing show Thursday.